I just wanted to ask you, would you like to go by Russell or Mr. Wheeler?
You can call me Russ.
Russ? Okay.
Yeah,
They were the before, I forget, because I have short-term memory. Okay. So,
that's all right.
my first question is, what is a competitive edge that creativity has brought to your job?
Hmm. Well, first, a little bit about me. I've been in the sales, revenue enablement, learning and development, talent development space for over 20 years now. I'm currently a sales enablement manager for Crisis 24, which we are a company that provides a multitude of security, risk solutions. One of them being a software as a service platform to help mitigate risks and critical events that happen on a global scale.
Okay.
So my responsibility is to equip the revenue generating team, so that salespeople, account managers with the skills that they need to be successful in their roles. So where I see creativity becoming a part of that is, I think the biggest thing really is just keeping an open mind and being open to different viewpoints, which sounds like, boy, this is pretty basic.
Yeah.
We should be able to do this.
Yeah.
But it takes a little more than that. So I'm sure, I'm going to go by Hector. I'm sure he taught you about deferring judgment as one of the ground rules for divergent thinking. And deferring judgment is something that I need to consciously remember to do on a daily basis. One would think that having been, been using creative problem solving for years, and even now I'm teaching creative problem solving at Clayton State University here in Georgia, that it would just become second nature. But it's something that you really have to, at least I have found, you have to consciously think about it and remind yourself that, okay, I need to defer judgment. I need to defer judgment.
Yeah, I can relate to that because I think everyone has their own way of doing things. And just because someone does it differently doesn't mean it's not going to work or it's not a good possibility.
Correct.
And do you feel like that's like kind of sets you apart from like peers like you or people in the same position?
Well, I'm the only person in the company that does what I do. So I think that's the first thing. I would say in terms of from a competitive landscape, somebody that is going for a role like mine, creative problem solving is something that can set me apart. And I'll give you an example. So a lot of times when I am developing a new course, something that hasn't existed before inside the company, one of the things I'll do is ask key stakeholders to really have a meeting. Now it's been mostly virtual. In the past, it could be in person, but now it's mostly virtual, and facilitate a creative problem solving session. Mostly just clarifying around what it is that they want, and then determining, hey, what are all the things that they need to know based on what you've shared with me already? So what are all the things that they need to know? And then let's divide them up into what do they need to know during the training, whatever it is, whether that be in-person, virtual led, whether that be e-learning, which is very popular in the corporate space, or is it something that that's a nice to know that could happen afterwards, after the formal training, whatever that is. So I've used creative problem solving a number of times to do that exercise alone, which has been super helpful in really getting everybody on the same page of, hey, this is what you told me. this is what we did. If it doesn't seem to work out, let's go back and let's revisit this so that we can make it better.
So in your position, do you interact with the clients directly or like indirectly, would you say?
Yeah, and I don't have external clients, which would be who our salespeople would interact with. My clients are internal.
Okay.
I like to joke and say they don't let me talk to external customers.
Okay. So what value have you seen brought to your clients by facilitating creative problem solving?
Oh, wow. Tremendous value. I would say, in addition to what I just shared with you about designing, a course or a curriculum or something along those lines, could just be helping out the organization as a whole with something that needs new thinking or needs a different approach or a willingness to try something new, which I think are all good reasons why creative problem solving can come into play. Again, if there's no need for creativity, there's no need for creative problem solving. So that's always been my mantra. I would also say that sometimes you're also using creative problem solving and they don't even know that you're using it. So it could be using certain techniques or tools that maybe are not, we're calling them explicitly out as to what they are. It could just be a matter of using them. Maybe you're not even using them with the divergent or convergent thinking guidelines, although it might go against probably what we've been taught, but I've also known that sometimes it just works on the fly.
So you actually brought up something that made me want to ask you a question I just made up. How do you people who are reluctant to change?
Oh, wow. Everybody's reluctant to change, including myself, even somebody that's gone through creativity and the creativity practitioner. Human beings don't like change. Let's just put it what it is. People don't like change. We like things that are predictable. As much as we say we don't, we do. Our brain works really well that way. At the same time, there are going to be moments when you need to have change. And I think you have to meet people where they are in terms of that change, whatever that change is. Like I said, most people probably don't want to deal with change if they don't have to. I also think change comes on different scales, right? My company was just recently acquired by Crisis 24. So there were people that lost their jobs, called the reduction in force. It happens a lot in corporate America. I didn't know if my job was going to be there or not under the new organization. It is. So I'm happy. So there's some change that happens that could be on a much grander scale, like a job. And then there's smaller change like, oh, hey, here's a new training course that you need to take, and here's the deadline that you need to complete it by. Yeah, that's a change, but so what?
Yeah. Okay, so my next question is, how do you think salespeople can become more creative, effective, and honest?
Creative, effective, and honest. That's a loaded question. I believe that salespeople have to keep an open mind when they're talking to a customer or a prospect. When a salesperson goes in or an account manager goes in and says, I already have the solution without listening to the person on the other end, they end up making a lot of times misguided judgments about what this person needs versus what this person needs. So I think in order to be effective and honest, you have to be doing that up front. Yeah, I mean, a big part of sales is just having a conversation with somebody. I mean, that's what it is. It's just about sharing information, exploring what their needs are, and really trying to identify, is this person someone who meets a lot of different criteria? Are they a decision maker? Is there a need? When does this need to be fulfilled? Who else do they need to talk to? So there's a lot of different factors. And there are different schools of thought, processes that are used to identify a buyer, to determine their engagement, to determine, are they the ones that are going to make the decision to purchase whatever it is that you're buying. So.
Thank you. How could you persuade people to get training in creative thinking?
Oh, wow. Another loaded question. I think part of the challenge with that, I think a lot of it, at least on the corporate side of things, I think it comes down to culture. I think it comes down to the culture of the organization, because I've worked in banking and now I work in high tech, two totally different fields, right? Yeah. So banking, old, established, no matter how much they think that they want to be new and cutting edge, with all due respect, a checking account is a checking account, no matter where you go. Mm-hmm. So how much new thinking is there needed in banking? There's new thinking needed, but probably not on the same scale as if you're in the tech field, where change is constant. And if you're not creative, you're going to miss an opportunity to potentially come up with a solution to address a need. Period. So I think part of it also, and I'm sure Hector would agree with me, is that you have to get the higher ups to sign off on the need for creativity in the organization. So the larger the organization, the more difficult it is to do that. Mm-hmm. Where I'm at now, it's my previous company was about 400 people. So that's a pretty small organization. My new organization, probably a couple thousand people. So it's a little bit bigger. But I'm still pretty close to who could make those decisions as to what needs to happen. I also believe, too, that it comes back to, is there an alignment with what the company values? Do they value innovation? Do they value creativity? Which then comes back to, what's your definition of creativity? What's your definition of innovation? Yeah. And where does this stuff called creative problem solving come in? Because the average person has no idea what creative problem solving is. They have no idea. And I'm not talking about creative problem solving lowercase. I'm talking about creative problem solving uppercase. Yeah. The process, etc.
So what recommendation / practices would you give to someone who is studying creative problem solving?
Well, first and foremost, keep an open mind. Learn as much as you can about creative problem solving. I would say one of the things that you definitely need to do, without a doubt, is to take the Foresight assessment. Shameless plug on my part. When I graduated from the master's program at Buffalo State in 2001, I was the first person to do research on Foresight before it was even known as Foresight. That established how people who learn creative problem solving learn it differently through their preferences, their differences. So that study in itself established that, hey, someone who's a high ideator doesn't find a whole lot of value in learning, brainstorming, because they can do it naturally. Whereas somebody who is a low ideator, it's like, oh, thank goodness I have a technique. I have some way of doing it. This is exciting. Now I can take advantage of it. The same thing with a creative problem solving process. Where do people fit within that process? Are they somebody who's a high clarifier, ideator, developer, implementer? Where are they? So I think having an understanding of where you fit naturally in the process will help you better understand when you learn the process, the tools and techniques, but then also looking at the big picture. How can this process, its parts, etc., help you now and in the future, personally and professionally? Which all of that was actually studied in my thesis research.
I was going to ask you, what was your strength in the Foresight assessment?
My strength, you're going to laugh. My profile is a hair. So I'm a high clarifier, high ideator, high developer, and a lower implementer. So that's how I am. I've gotten better with implementation because I recognize it's a valley for me, for a lower preference for me, for lack of better words. So I have things in place, to-do lists, some sort of project management tool that I use to ensure I stay on track. Because if I don't, I'll just live and clarify, ideate, and develop all day long and never get anything done.
That's interesting. I really like the assessment because you get to know people a bit more, and it's good for teams. I want to get my school to have my team do it, but there's a little fun fact about me. Mine is I'm in the gray zone for like all of the areas, and I was like, so I have no strength in either. And then somebody said, well, maybe you can go either way. Like you're fine with.
You're an integrator.
Yeah.
Back when I was doing my research, Hector will probably laugh at this when he listens to this. We called them flatliners. That didn't seem to settle well. And then they became chameleons, I think, because they could adjust just like the animal, a chameleon. But then that morphed into an integrator, which I think is probably the best term for someone who really can flex very well across all four. I envy integrators, actually. So
I was like, I like that better than what I thought. I was. Well, looking back at your, I was like, man, I have no strengths, but I think in that sense I am flexible. So I was looking at your background, and I noticed you minored in creativity and innovation, but your major was business, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
What led you to minor creativity and innovation?
Real simple. I was a transfer student from a community college in Buffalo, and I went to a transfer fair, I guess, where Buffalo State College at the time would showcase their different programs. And so I went to campus and walked around, and I saw this thing on creativity, and I'm like, what's this? And that's where I met Dr. Gerard Puccio, who now leads the Center for Applied Imagination at Buffalo State. I met him, talked to him, and I said, well, this sounds real interesting. He says, hey, I'm teaching Intro to Creativity class this fall. Why don't you join my class? I said, okay. And that's how it started. I took one class after another, and then I was like, you know what? My instinct is telling me I need to get the master's degree in this. I have no idea what I'm going to use it for. I have no idea, I know I'm going to do something in business, probably working corporate, but I don't know exactly how I'm going to use this just yet. But hey, sometimes when you follow your your gut instinct leads you down to a good path. And so, yeah, so I'm really grateful that I did
I feel like that's how I kind of got to my master's as well.
that.
Psychology, but then I focused a lot on the creativity aspect. Um,
Yes. Yes.
and I do feel like it just so happens. So can you give your definition of applied innovation?
Hmm. Well, I think applied. Let me go back. I think depending on how you define both creativity and innovation, I think a lot of it depends on where you sit. And what I mean by that is typically in the business world, the word innovation is used. In education, it's typically creativity. But for the most part, I would say that they're the same definition to a layman's understanding. So I say applied innovation is the use of creative or innovative thinking, if we want to call it that. That's what I think applied innovation is. So you're making a purposeful effort to utilize creative problem solving, process, tools, techniques in what you do. And like I said before, applied, thinking about applied innovation. Alex Osborne's number one guideline for divergent thinking, deferring judgment. I use that every day, defer judgment. So I would say that's applied innovation.
Thank you. I feel like the deferred judgment is like such a big thing
Mm-hmm.
when creative because it puts you in a box
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard to see outside that box once you've done it, not even knowingly.
Correct. Correct.
In a leadership role, how do you promote creative thinking? Can you give us some examples?
Sure. I think, in a leadership role, you have to emulate what you want the team to do, whether that mean that you have a team that you lead directly or a team that you lead indirectly. So I think creative thinking comes from the person who is leading the group. And how you do that really, I think, depends on the situation. I mean, it really can be as simple as going through an exercise and reiterating, deferring judgment. Let's think about all different kinds of opportunities here, et cetera. It could be saying, hey, I'm going to use a technique and this is how it works. So I'll give you an example. I was doing a foresight session at one of my previous employers for a team. And the activity was, which is a classic activity, is how to improve the bathtub. Now, I did make a caveat to that because at the time I happened to work at Amazon, and I said, all right, so we're going to improve the bathtub, but I need at least 5, no less than 5 features in the bathtub that use Alexa. So how would you incorporate Alexa into improving the bathtub? I didn't give them any guidelines. I just said, go for it. I gave them 10 minutes to do the activity, and it was like a race. Like, how many do you have? How many do I have? And they were just so competitive, each, different groups that I would have working together. And they come up with all different kinds of ideas without even saying deferring judgment, striving for quantity, seeking novelty, build on, all of those guidelines. And amazing all the uses you can find for Alexa
Yeah.
in a bathtub. And even came up with a price. Like, how much is this bathtub? How do you get it?
Yeah.
Can you install it? So it's all of those things. But yeah, I think it comes back to leadership, and I think it also comes back to you have to have an awareness of creative problem solving. And I think if you're trained in it, then you know when to use it and how to get the most out of the group that you're leading by either, usually in my experience, has been using parts of it, never from clarify to implementation. It's always different parts of it that you're using at any given time.
That's good. I like that idea of coming up with 5 uses of Alexa at the bathtub.
Correct. And if I would have given them 10, they would have come up with 20. I mean, it's, oh, we need a button that says, Alexa, reorder, bath supplies. Alexa, turn up the lights. Well, okay, that's great. Alexa can do that. But how are you going to do that with the bathtub?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just remember, you got electricity here, so we don't want to electrocute the person in the bathtub.
Yeah. Very cool. Like Alexa, set water safeguard.
Correct.
It's very cool. I feel like so it's like giving them the opportunity, like how was I going to say this? So you gave them the opportunity, and I guess like based on that dynamic and like the way you implement stuff, like the workers felt that they could come up with any idea for this thing that may seem like a box of ideas.
Correct. And using as a part of the foresight debrief, the idea was to see how, not really necessarily generating ideas. That wasn't the goal. The goal was to see on the team, how were people, how did they align to the preferences that were identified through the foresight? And did they do those things naturally, or did they not? And most of the times they did. There were the people that were generating lots of ideas. There were some people that were asking questions, or they would be typically the clarifiers, the one who were asking me questions. The implementers were like, we just want to get this done. We only got so much time. The developers are like, oh, wait, let's talk about that idea. Maybe we can. So you see it play out. And from a facilitator standpoint, it's great to grab those little nuggets and bring it into the debrief. So as an example, I could say something like, Karen, I noticed that you were blah, 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 blah. Tell me a little bit more about that approach that you took. Simple as that.
Thank you for elaborating on that.
Yeah.
And I have one more question, unless I can think of another one. Can you share a memorable project where you use creative problem solving? What made this so memorable?
Wow. Well, I'm going to have to go way, way, way back. And actually, I was a grad student, and I was working for a bank in Buffalo at the time. And I was in the mortgage area. I was a loan auditor. That was a job I realized I did not want to do for the rest of my life. But the class that I was taking was facilitating creative problem solving. And I had to do a project, where you actually facilitate creative problem solving, basically write a paper. What did you do? What was the outcome? All this stuff. So I talked to my manager, and I remember asking her, is there anything that, that really needs new thinking? Is there something that's been on your mind? And she goes, yeah. She goes, you see this stack of folders, which were loans? She goes, see all these loans here? I can't move forward with these. They're missing documents. They're missing signatures. They're missing. Now, this is going way back, like almost 30 years ago, where there was nothing that was electronic. This was all paper. And these documents, these folders, were all the documents that came from I don't know if you're familiar with the house buying process, but when you go to close a home, you sign your life away in all of these documents.
Yeah.
And so the bank gets all of those back from the attorney. And some loans were thin, some loans were thick, depends on whatever was requested or required. All right.
Mhm.
So my area would audit those loans to make sure that everything was fine, make sure everything was done correctly. And then there was another process that happened after that. Well, these loans, you're talking hundreds, if not millions of dollars in loans that can't be either sold to another bank to service them or to keep on the bank's, basically their loan portfolio. So I got all the people together. And after speaking with my manager, we came up with a problem statement. I don't remember what it was, but we came up with a problem statement. We generated ideas, came up with lots of ideas. Then we did the conversion thinking, we did hits highlighting, all that other kind of good stuff. And I remember my manager saying, I want everybody to select ideas. Okay, great, we can do that. And then we put stuff together. And then I said, all right, yeah, her name was Lisa. I said, all right, Lisa, what do you see us doing now? I said, now you're the leader, so you're going to decide what you see. And what ended up happening is instead of us spending X number of hours a day just auditing loans, she said, we're going to take, I don't know, let's say Thursday morning. And we're going to just take those 4 hours. And we are going to, every single one of us is going to take X number of loans. We're going to go through these loans and we're going to find out what's missing and we're going to make something happen. In other words, we're going to reach out to the closing attorney. We'll reach out to the customer, whatever's missing, whatever is needed. Maybe it was another department before it got to us that was missing something. So that we made sure it was all there. And we probably reduced the number within a month, like by 70%. It was incredible. There were so many that could have just were missing a signature that were missing. And so if you're auditing a loan, you don't see something, you just basically flag it and then you throw it in another pile. And it's like it's forgotten about. Well, it doesn't work that way. And so that was one of those things that I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And so, yeah, so the bank made money off of that.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a really good story because I feel like people like sometimes look at something, it's like, what's the point of talking about this? And we're never come up with a solution. Or if like, it's like it's in the way, it stops you from, reaching a goal and I think it probably helps telling the manager like, hey, like, what do you want us to do?
Right.
Like to implement plan.
Right. Because if she had a solution, right, it would have already been done. I mean, I just remember her being super busy. She had a good sized team. She had numbers that she had to meet. X number of loans had to be audited per day, per week. She had to report those numbers to her manager. But really all these loans that were non-decision, meaning what to do with them, they were just in a holding pattern. And banks still do this today. But mostly your smaller banks will write you a mortgage. Let's say it's for $500,000. They could keep that loan and make the money over 30 years. So whatever that interest rate is, they make X number of dollars, whatever. Or they could sell it to another bank, let's say like a big bank like a Chase, as an example, or Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo would literally turn around and pay that bank back $500,000 plus whatever it is to acquire that loan and all that. So the bank is literally making money by not just lending the money, but by selling the loan. They get the money back, plus they get something on top of that. And then to turn around and they can lend that money out again. Not getting into the whole banking thing because I could really bore you with that, but that's typically how that works. So then you had, let's just say hundreds of thousands, if not, let's say millions of dollars in loans that were just sitting there that couldn't be sold, which means the bank couldn't make money off of them by selling them into what they know as the secondary market, where your loan is serviced by somebody else, which could be a Wells Fargo or a Chase or whatever. So the bank was losing out on money. And
So I have a question. Were those loans like in limbo? Like, were they already approved or not approved yet?
They were already approved. They were closed. The borrower had the home, or they bought the home, or they refinanced the mortgage or whatever. It was done. It was just a matter of, in my area, going through a checklist, making sure that, the document was signed, or was something highlighted, was something initialed, was something there in the folder itself, like a flood certification. Can't tell you how important that is, right? Is the home, can the loan, can the home is in a flood zone or not? Because that's important. And if it is in a flood zone, then where is the flood insurance? Because if that's not there, that's a big problem, because you can't sell that. Or if the borrower didn't sign a document, they can't sign that. Or if a title search wasn't done, which is something that has to happen before it closed. So simple things like that. Most of the time, it was somebody just didn't sign something, or we got a copy of something and we need the original. Things like that. So those were usually the big. Now that I'm really going back into the cobwebs in my brain here, but yeah.
This is a topic, but how was your manager when you asked her about like the problem that, like, if there's a problem you could solve? Did she like think truly you were going to find a solution for the big stack of loans, or was she optimistic about it?
That's a good question. Well, that's going way back. I just remember approaching her about the class that I was taking. She knew I was in grad school. And I said, hey, I need to do a project. I'm wondering if there's something here that I could do. And she's like, well, what do you need to do? And so I told her what I was needing to do: facilitate creative problem solving. So I think she was like intrigued by that. And so that's when she and I set up some time to talk about, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is the project. This is the outcome that I'm trying to achieve. How can I help you? And that's really how it all started. So I don't know if she had any expectation. She was just following my lead per se to see where it went. So I think, when she was getting accolades that this pile of loans that couldn't be sold, all of a sudden turned around and was starting to get, sold, she was like, okay, wow, that was awesome. She goes, I wonder what else we could do. And I'm like, well, the world's your oyster.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's like a really good story. I'm going to be sharing at dinner parties now.
Well, I would say another one that I've used in my area is like what I said earlier about being, what are all the things that a learner needs to know by the end of the training class? What's the needs to know? What's the nice to know? So creative problem solving is a great exercise for that. And then I would also say too, you can find problems in an organization. You can sniff them out, or sometimes it's a problem that presents itself. And you're like, geez, this could be something that's good for a new approach. And you'd be surprised. People that are willing to give it a shot. Because, hey, if they already had a solution to the idea, they would have already had it done, as an example. So,
yeah. So those are all my questions for you. I want to thank you for taking the time and rescheduling.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This was fun.
Yeah. And I feel like I gained a lot just listening to you and asking you these questions. Did you have any last things you wanted to add? I know Dr. Ramos is trying to encourage more students to take creative problem solving and his courses in that sense. If you wanted to say anything to encourage a student.
I would say that we live in a day and age, even more so now than ever before, where it doesn't matter what field of study you're in or what your occupation is, there's a need for creative thinking. And it's not just this ambiguous term, creative thinking. It's more of a structured creative thinking, like what creative problem solving can do. I like to think of creative problem solving as a toolbox, and you have tools inside that toolbox that you can use at certain times. And I think it's also knowing where to utilize those tools and when to utilize them. But I think creative thinking is something that is needed more so than not. I believe that for every problem that we experience, there is a creative solution to it if it requires creative thinking. There's no problem that a human being can create that can't turn around and be solved. It may not be pretty how it gets solved. It may not be as easy as, let's say, the problem to create it was, right? But I think that creative thinking, critical thinking, creative problem solving can benefit any student regardless of their major, and just, the future application of that in what they do. So
I really like that, because I was telling him everybody should take this class. It should be a required class for everybody because it applies to everything.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would also say too that the class that I teach at Clayton State University is a creativity and change management. Something like creativity and change management. It's for juniors and seniors. And so what I do is they take the foresight, and then I have them go through the book by Dr. Roger Firestone. It'll come to me. Anyway, so they go through that entire book. And this is an asynchronous class. So unfortunately, I never see my students. They post the assignment, then they turn around and they submit the assignment. And, but anyway, so at the end of the semester, and these are all business students. So there's no other, there isn't any non-business students that go through this class. I give them what I call a creative problem solving journey, because a lot of them have shared throughout the semester things that they want to do as a result of taking the class. Like, oh, I never thought about this. I never thought about that. Or I'd like to start this, or I'd like to do that. So I came up with this creative problem solving journey where they take something that's very ambiguous and they literally go through the creative problem solving process on their own to get to the point where they have a 30, 60, 90-day action plan at the end, how they're going to do it. And so it's Dr. Firestone created these worksheets that accompany the book. And that's what I give them. I give them the worksheets. I said, here's what it is. You got like a month to do it. Turn it in. Give me a paper. Tell me the story behind what it is. I go through and I can't tell you how many people are like, wow, this was awesome. I love this, or I'm going to use this again in the future, or, I'm going to keep this book. Some people say I'm going to buy friends this book, or I'm going to buy my parents this book, or things like that. And it's just like, yeah, this is why it's so important. And it's not just for business students, right? That's just where I'm happen to be slotted in. Think about yourself and think about what you were taking.
Yeah.
And, you may not have business students that go through that. But again, going back to my Buffalo State days, creativity courses were not aligned to any one particular major at the undergrad level. It can be just for anybody. And then got to the graduate level. Hector can appreciate this. Probably when I went through probably half of my cohort, more than half of my cohort were educators. The rest of us were not in education. So it depends on what we were doing. Some of us were going to go into business. Some were already in business. Some of them were working somewhere, or we're going to work for ourselves, or we were taking it because we wanted to take it.
Yeah.
Whatever. So I probably gave you more than you wanted to know, but
no, that's fine. No, it was great because I felt the same way because I picked creativity and cognition. And then once I was in it, I was like, I made the right choice. And even like when we do like our assignments with Dr. Ramos, I would try to choose professional and then a personal one, and then back and forth to see how I could apply in different aspects. And then I would use like friends or family.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times you'd be surprised how many people have something that you can, walk through, whether that be a formalized session or could be something that's just informal, and just running through a tool, and they don't even really think about it, or you're not really thinking about it. It's just, you're just doing it. So, yeah.
Well, that's all I have. I was going to say thank you again for your time.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. And your name is easy to remember because my wife's name is Karen as well. So it's very easy.
Oh, awesome. I'll see you.
All right. Take care. All right. Bye-bye.